Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi şrah li sadri ve yessir li emri ve hlul min lisani yefkahu kavli. Selamun aleyküm ve rahmetullahi ve berekatuhu. Inshallah, we will continue with the fifth warning of the 21st word. So this is the 21st word, which is the interpretation of the verse, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. For such prayers are enjoined on believers at stated times. For such prayers are enjoined on believers at stated times, which is a verse from Quran chapter 4 and verse number 103.
The word is about, someone is asking the question, is prayer not difficult? Or, it's never ending, you do it all every day, and it's like a burden. And then Nursi asks his own soul, and then he realizes that he also has such wonderings. So he then starts coming out with responses to give to his own soul. And like the first one is, is your life eternal? And once you see that your life is not eternal, you should realize that you need to do something to make it eternal. And prayer is one of those. And then the second warning, prayer is should be like eating bread or drinking water. You should feel that need to do it. And if you feel the need to do it, then doing it will become very pleasurable for you. The third warning is that even though it might be at the same time, it still has some burden to it though. And even if it should not have too much burden, it still is difficult to some degree. So you should be patient. So I remember what Brother Yusuf said. He said you have to be patient in obedience and rebellion and in worship, or no, something. Yeah, basically patience is an important part of religion. And in prayer too, you should also be patient. You might not feel how amazing it is or how wonderful it is every time you pray. And the fourth warning, this was talking about, I'm working so hard to graduate and get a good job and do all these things. And what about my eternal life? And what about, I don't know, while I'm actually, after I die too, the eternal life after I die, but even now, reaching some type of eternity at the moment, feeling at peace while I'm still alive. So you should do some work right now, maybe daily, work for gaining that eternity right now. And that's as much as I remember.
O my world-worshipping soul, does your slackness in worship and remissness in the prescribed prayers arise from the multiplicity of your worldly occupations, or because you cannot find time due to the struggle for livelihood? Were you created only for this world, that you spend all your time on it? You know that in regard to your abilities, you are superior to all the animals, but in regard to procuring the necessities of worldly life, you cannot compete with even a sparrow. So why can you not understand that your basic duty is not to labor like an animal, but to strive for a true, perpetual life like a true human being? In addition, the things you call worldly occupations mostly do not concern you, and are trivial matters which you meddle in officiously. You neglect the essential things and pass your time acquiring inessential information as though you were going to live for 1,000 years. For example, you squander your precious time on worthless things, like learning what the rings around Saturn are like, how many chickens there are in America, as though you were becoming an expert in astronomy and statistics. You say, what keeps me from the prayers and worship and causes me to be lax is not unnecessary things like that, but essential matters like earning a livelihood. Then my answer is this. If you work for a daily wage of 100 kurush, and someone comes to you...
Cents.
If you work for a daily wage of 100 cents, and someone comes to you and says, come and dig here for 10 minutes, and you will find a brilliant and an emerald worth $100, If you reply, "No, I won't come, because 10 cents will be cut from my wage, and my subsistence will be less," of course you understand what a foolish pretext it would be. In just the same way, you work in this orchard for your livelihood. If you abandon the obligatory prayers, all the fruits of your effort will be restricted to only a worldly, unimportant, and unproductive livelihood. But if you spend your rest periods on the prayers, which allow your spirit to relax and heart to take a breather, you will discover two minds which are an important source, both for a productive worldly livelihood and your livelihood and provisions of the hereafter. First mind, through a sound intention, you will receive a share of the praises and glorifications offered by all the plants and trees, whether flowering or fruit-bearing, that you grow in the garden. Footnote, this first station was a lesson for someone in a garden, so it was explained in this way. Second mind, whatever is eaten of the garden's produce, whether by animals or man, cattle or flies, buyers or thieves, it will become like almsgiving from you. But on condition you work in the name of the true provider and within the bounds of what he permits, and see yourself as a distribution official giving his property to his creatures. So see what a great loss is made by one who abandons the prescribed prayers. What significant wealth he loses, and he is deprived of those two results and minds, which would otherwise cause him to work eagerly and ensure his morale is strong. He becomes bankrupt. Even as he grows old, he will grow weary of gardening and lose interest in it, saying, "What is it to me? I am anyway leaving this world. Why should I put up with this much difficulty?" He will sink into idleness. But the first man says, "I shall work harder at both worship and licit activities in order to send even more abundant light to my grave and procure more provisions for my life in the hereafter."
Yes, Brother Rikan, what did you think about the fifth warning?
That's a terrible way of... So should we start from the beginning?
Sure, go ahead. Allah.
O my worshipping soul, does your slackness in worship and remissness in the prescribed prayers arise from the multiplicity of your worldly occupations, or because you cannot find time due to struggle for livelihood? Were you created only for this world that you spend all your time on it? You know that in regard to your abilities, you are superior to all animals, but in regard to procuring the necessities of worldly life, you cannot compete with even a sparrow. So why can you not understand that your basic duty is not to labor like an animal, but to strive for a true, perpetual life like a true human being? So I guess here he's saying that, like, possibly one reason that you are reluctant to pray, or you're taking it in a lazy mood, because you think you don't have time for prayer. You are already preoccupied with all these important duties, worldly duties. Like you have to teach, you have to work, I don't know, you have to produce, you have to study some exams, you have to take care of your children, you have to earn money, I don't know. Thus you don't have time for prayers. And he's asking, is that so? Like, do you really think you're providing yourself or your family, and that's the reason you're spending all your time? It says something interesting, like even if you try to provide yourself, you wouldn't be able to do it. Even a sparrow would do it better than yourself. So why you are, let's say, competing in an arena that you cannot succeed or you cannot win, but instead compete on your arena, which is striving for perpetual life and becoming a true human being. I guess these are interesting points. I don't know, what do you think about this one? We do feel the pressure of working, right? We do feel the pressure of earning money or providing ourselves a livelihood. Like for instance, the immigrants like us in US, we don't want to lose our status, so we work hard. We spend all the time to please our boss, our colleagues. We don't want to get into any trouble. Or for other people who are native, I'm sure they have their own problems that they have to solve. Some of us has families that depend on us. Some of us has, I don't know, sick parents, maybe children, or friends. It seems like we have these pressures to provide ourselves and people we love. So why he is denying this?
I'm trying to see how much I am using this as an excuse for my worship in general. I guess in specific, definitely, since we are studying the prescribed prayers. But it might be the case that after a point it becomes automatic, then you already allocate a part of your day for prayer. You don't think about it because it's already part of the schedule and it becomes so much mechanic. But I'm trying to think of what if a new worship is going to be suggested to me today. It might be even for...
With new worship, like what do you mean?
Let's say somebody says that, okay, we are having discussions on Fridays, let's say somebody told me.
I understand.
So it's inviting me to remember my Creator, which is out of my schedule. So how would I respond to that? Since it's out of my schedule, meaning that I am allocating something else to that part of it. And I mean, honestly, I'm not thinking too much about my daily prayers, which is something bad. As during the weekend, Dr. Ali was mentioning, he was saying that prayer time is the best time for planning for the day. Unfortunately, this is how it is. But since it became like a routine, maybe I'm not seeing it too much as an obstacle. But for something extra, definitely I need to fight with myself. Because my first reaction would be, well, I need to do this and that. A lot of thises and that's are out there. So if I am a student, it's being, I need to study for this exam, or it's being like I need to work for my thesis. And for example, thesis had been a very big issue, which takes 5-6 years. And if you squeeze it, maybe it's going to be put into 2 years. But since it's scattered all over the place, it takes so much long. But in my perception, I think like as if I am working 24/7 to it. This is why when somebody asks me to, let's say, come Friday, let's have a discussion, my excuse is being, well, I have to work for my thesis, for instance. And in here, this is what I guess the author is saying. Initially, he says, are you only here for working for your thesis? Then he even digs further, saying that, are you sure you are putting all your time to your livelihood also? You are wasting a lot of your time as well. Even if, well, go and work for whatever, but just saving your time from the part that you wasted is going to be fit for that anyways. But in general, the tone in this fifth, like the 21st word since the very beginning is this laziness and slacking human self.
Finding excuses.
Finding excuses, yeah. So it's, since the very beginning, I'm sensing that it's really trying to, because the person that asked the question initially said that prayer is good. I mean, he's not saying that prayer is bad. So there's this sort of a notion. I know that it's good, but somehow I'm finding some excuses too. And in here again, he is addressing this aspect of human self. He's not trying to prove me that prayer is good.
So about what you said, like you said, you don't have difficulty allocating time for these prayers because it becomes automatic and so on. I guess we can take it also as allocating your mind as well. Like, yes, maybe you pray, let's say, in schedule, but you do not allocate your mind to your prayers, but you allocate your mind to worldly occupations like planning for. Because, I mean, checking myself, you even find excuses like, this will be very childish, but this is how my mind works. You say, oh, my creator would, excuse me because, this is really important, right? Even during the prayer. So yeah, I guess we have all these different allocations, like allocating time, allocating your feelings, allocating your mind, whether you give any priority to your prayers or not. And here, I guess, the author is saying, okay, let's assume you're giving your priorities to your worldly life, you're providing your livelihood and so on. He says, don't fool yourself. This is not the case, as you were saying. This is not the case. You're not any good in providing your livelihood anyway. You're just wasting your time most of the times. So Feria was, I guess, raising hand, at least for a moment. If she still wants to say something, please go ahead.
Just adding on along the lines of what you all said. I mean, finding excuses, that's what, at least I'm good at, or human beings are good at, right? I mean, I feel like that's what the author is walking us through, that we all know this. It's all within us, that what is it that we need to prioritize, right? But then, we just take the lazy route and then justify ourselves with, any kind of excuses, really. Just good at finding out excuses. But it's very interesting where that sentence really caught my attention. I'm still thinking on it. You neglect these essential things and pass your time acquiring inessential information as though you were going to live for 1,000 years. So, this last part, we all are in agreement. Definitely, nobody's living here in this transient universe for 1,000 years, but then yet we go on passing over time with, how the system is set up, right? That's how it is. You encounter this. You're supposed to be doing, let's say you're a student, you're supposed to be doing your assignments and so on and so forth. Then whatever you do, you're a working professional, then you're doing, your day spent doing that. And or if you have kids, family, then obviously you're, these are your responsibilities. But then essentially, what is it? What matters essentially really is I think it's a question that we all need to be like really pondering over in terms of, am I really utilizing myself, like all the feelings and emotions I'm given, for their true purpose? Because it's easy to shun it away, again, excuse, I had to do this, I had to drop my kid there, I had to submit this assignment. But that's the dilemma, at least I'm facing, right? And I can call it a problem. It's a problem, at least for me right now. It's a human problem, right? So, it's given to us. This system is set up, right? You have to work, you got to go to school and so on and so forth. So how do we, it's not even a matter of, I got to balance my time. No, but that's how it is. This is what's presented. I think it's just utilizing or using whatever we have and then working out everything in a meaningful way where yeah, like really questioning what's priority, really. Am I listening to myself? Am I really making the most of what I'm given? Yeah, I don't know. I'm just throwing this question out there. It's like it's a human problem, and how do we overcome this? Because I mean, looking into the eternal aspect of things, that's very daunting. I mean, again, we all have this notion going on, but like, am I applying it, with what I have or whatever I'm doing? I'm at school, I'm at work, I don't know. Yeah, it's a question I'm throwing out there.
Thank you. Any other points? Okay, let's continue, inshallah. And with the responsibilities, like Feria also mentioned this, like we say we have responsibilities to take care of something, to do something, and so like a student, she or he needs to study his classes. I guess in the final part that we've read, when author talks about first mind and second mind, I guess he tells us like how you really fulfill your responsibilities and how you benefit from your responsibilities. And again, which is linked to doing your prayers. Let's continue, inshallah. In addition, the things you call worldly occupations mostly do not concern you and are trivial matters which you meddle in officiously. What does it mean, officiously? Okay. You neglect the essential things and pass your time acquiring inessential information, and so on. It continues. So I guess the point is, like, although you claim that you do all this serious stuff that you have to do, he's saying most of things you do is not even essential. It's just waste of time. Like the example he gives, interesting. How many chickens there are in America?
And he's saying this before the invention of Wikipedia.
Yes. How many chickens there are in America? This is funny. But at the same time, especially like someone like me, whose occupation relates to data analysis and so on, I guess at least part of my job is counting the number of chickens in America. Yeah, the chickens may be changing. Right? It's not chicken, maybe it's something else, but it's counting the number of chickens in America. So, yeah, any comments?
Yeah, sometimes I start looking at Wikipedia for something useful, then I find myself something totally unrelated after 3-4 links. I'm reading about Native American history or something.
Not that Native American history is unimportant, but not in the context, let's say.
From where I started, I shouldn't end up there.
Oh, Suhail, please go ahead.
I find interesting, like, what is a worldly occupation? Is it, to me, it's anything that is on a horizontal relationship. So, as he says, learning facts and figures for sake of facts and figures is really meaningless at the end of the day. I'm not really sure what it even means. It doesn't really benefit one's humanity. And whereas prayer ideally is a sort of vertical relationship. So even if you're learning something, the question is, do you have a vertical relationship with the creator of the universe? And, very rarely, if ever, do people say, oh, Saturn has rings around it. What does it mean? No, nobody really says that. They just say Saturn has rings around it. There are 8 planets in the solar system. I mean, just facts, just statements that don't really mean anything at the end of the day. They may help you get a job or earn an income. And that's kind of what at least secular society has deemed value, has put value in, is essentially information that can be sort of commoditized or financialized, and that you can make have some sort of profession out of it. But what does it mean at the end of the day? I mean, no one really knows. And that's why to me, it has no value. That's when he says, as if you're going to live 1,000 years, because you think what you know is what matters. That's all. That's all that matters to the human being. But you don't realize that you're going to die, or that the world will end. So does it really fundamentally matter how many rings, as he says, are around Saturn, or how many chickens are in America? It's just information. This doesn't mean anything at the end of the day.
I guess there's the distinction between the vertical and the horizontal relationships that Suhaib mentioned is really important, right? Because, for instance, you may also benefit from the number of rings around the Saturn. It is possible. Like you having a trouble and saying that, putting the one who puts 3 rings around the Saturn would definitely could put 3 something in my life so that, I will achieve what I need. So it may give you a source of satisfaction. It may give you a sort of sense of security, but only if you can make a relationship between the rings of the Saturn and the creator who puts them there. Or I remember, in one part, the Nursi himself was saying, at least in his time, he was giving some figures about the number of species known, let's say. But he was not using them for the sake of the figures themselves. Do you know what? There are that many animal kingdom or species in the world. He was saying a creator, at least this is what I remember, it might be wrong, but the messages probably will be similar. The one who can feed all these kind of species would obviously able to feed me as well. So this is it's clearly a useful information now. It's an evidence for your future, for your what you need. Awesome, please go ahead.
Thank you. So also adding the sentence about becoming an expert in astronomy or statistics. I hear that a lot also, in terms of in my field or in any other field. And it's kind of a very hard kind of thing in terms of when you talk to people, or when you are, this is what the society, or as Suhail was saying, this is what you need for a job, or for, you have to be an expert. But it's interesting how Nursi really puts that into this perspective in terms of, I found it funny also, this is how knowing what the rings around Saturn is and how many chickens there are. These are the conversations you keep hearing all around you. At work also, in school, everybody is just talking about all these things, all these facts and figures, and whoever knows more is deemed the expert in those things. And the idea that, at least Nursi is putting it, again, even if you become the expert in whatever field you are, how long can you be that expert? That's the question that one should really concern themselves with. But nobody, even for me, I'm thinking, hey, do I really think about this? That even, okay, I mastered something, and how long will this mastery be for? So this whole slackness, or whole laziness in terms of really seeing, as Faria was pointing out about the priority, is really, really important. And again, emphasizing, as Suhail was mentioning, even all the, just for the worldly kind of occupation, as if it's only, for this world, and there is no vision in terms of, the human ability has this vision for a long term, kind of seeing that, the reality of things, but just totally ignoring that reality. Like when we're preoccupied with something, it's just that matter that is, we are facing, and that's what we really think about. We don't, see or establish that view of this, seeing what, the outcome, or what the, the long term in terms of really is this only, my life is only be considered only for this particular purpose or what. Yeah, so that's what I was thinking, what does the, even if you become the expert, how long can you be that expert? Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. And I guess this attitude is like, although we talk about, society and so on, this attitude is always with us. Like whatever we do, although the examples are about, the Saturn or the numbers, so it may sound, this problem is only for engineers or, let's say, people working with the numbers. But we see it everywhere. Like if you are an artist, for instance, you spend all your day with Instagram collecting all the images that other people post, as if, by just counting them, you will become a better artist. Or just, I guess this is with us, like whatever we do. Like when I check myself, I see that, I do most of the things just to please the norms that people expect me to fulfill. So anyway, yeah. Feria, please go ahead, and then we can continue, inshallah, with if you say first.
Just wanted to brought up what Asim shared in terms of being an expert, right? Yeah, if you have knowledge of something, the more knowledge you have. But then you question, hey, how long can you be an expert, right? Yeah, I mean, that's how I would say the universe function as well. That's how the order is as well, because think about it, everything needs to be updated, right? Starting from technology, right? It needs to be updated to fit in the conditions of now. Same thing with in any field, even expert, right? You have to update yourself with whatever is out there, but then you have to question, like, why am I doing what I'm doing, right? Am I learning I don't know, something like how many chickens are there somewhere, or I don't know, how our babies produce, whatever. Am I learning it just for the sake of learning? Like, so the question, really underlying question is really, why am I doing what I'm doing? And again, it goes back to like the existential side of thing, or making the vertical connection, as was mentioned by Brother Suhail. And then, I mean, also questioning what's the need in me to wanting to update myself as well, right? Because that's how it is. We are automatically made in a way that we have to update ourselves with whatever we're doing. But at the end of the day, like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I have this need to update myself? And so on and so forth. So there's gotta be making sure that, everything is recognized, everything is acknowledged, the need is recognized, right? This desire to learn or seek something needs to be recognized as well for a bigger purpose, or it shouldn't be bound to just the limits of this universe. That's what I wanted to share just for now.
Jazakallah khair. There is a comment from Hatice Beyza, a few lines, so please bear with me. She says, one interpretation of, oh, my world worshipping soul. Oh, my world worshipping soul can be working for the world for the sake of the world. So whether we are a student or working a job or whatever other role we may have taken on, if we are taking on that role for the sake of that role only, we become world worshipping, limiting ourselves to the horizontal connection only. And that becomes a meaningless task in the larger scheme of things when one asks themselves, what is my priority? What do I essentially want to do or attain while I'm here? So I guess this is a nice summary of what has been discussed so far. Thanks a lot. Let's continue with the if you say part. What keeps me from the prayers and worship and causes me to be lax is not unnecessary things. So he's saying I'm not counting the chickens, but I'm trying to get some essential things to be, get some essential things done. Like he says, earning a livelihood. Then my answer is this: if you work for a daily wage of 100 cents. So example is like, okay, let's assume you're really trying to earn your livelihood. Let's assume you're earning 100 cents, and by spending some of your time, a tiny bit of your time for prayer, you will lose 10 cents out of it. But by doing so, by performing your prayer, you will earn $100. So there is no point of being sorry for 10 cents, he says. And it says, in just the same way you work in these orchards for your livelihood, if you abandon the obligatory prayers, all the fruits of your effort will be restricted to only a worldly, unimportant, and unproductive livelihood. So if you are after livelihood, yes, but by just restricting yourself to worldly life, you will earn something. Like if you work, you earn money, for instance. This is kind of a law of lordship that we observe. But it will be an unimportant and unproductive livelihood as compared to what you could have earned by performing your prayers. It says if you spend your rest periods on prayers, if you perform your prayers, which allow your spirit to relax and heart to take a breath, you will discover two minds which are an important source, both for a productive worldly livelihood and your livelihood and provisions of the hereafter. So he says, when you perform your prayer, this is what I understand, when you perform your prayer, they do not, how would you say, like, cut you from the livelihood, the worldly livelihood. Block you, let's say. They will not cause any loss in your livelihood. In contrast, you will continue getting your livelihood, but at the same time, you will get much more. So this is what I understand, and then he explains these two minds, what they are. So let me read them as well. The first mind, like the first source of bounties, through a sound intention, you will receive a share of the praises and glorifications offered by all the plants and trees, whether flowering or fruit-bearing, that you grow in the garden. So this is example for a gardener. So I guess the same can be given for a software developer like Asim, for instance. So he says, through your sound intentions and your prayers, you will receive a share of the praises and glorifications offered by every piece of code that you write. So whatever you do, whether you teach to children, whether you write some codes, whether you treat some patients, or you study your classes, whatever you do, there's a praise in this action, or there's a praise in the product that comes to life. All the plants that you grow, they praise the Creator, and you receive a share from that. That's an interesting, I guess we should discuss this. And the second part, the second source, second mind, is whatever is eaten of the garden's produce, or whatever the software that being used by others that you wrote, whether by animals or men. Yeah, for software, maybe animal would be. Actually, no, right? There are all these new gadgets for pets as well. They can use these gadgets to feed themselves, and so on. Anyway, whether by animals or men, cattle or flies, buyers or thieves, like even they steal your products, you will still get a share from them. It will become like alms giving from you, but on condition you work in the name of the true provider and within the bounds of what he permits, and see yourself as a distribution official giving his property to his creatures. So the way I understand is, like from the beginning, we're saying that, okay, yes, we have to work, there is a system that will imposed on us from the birth. So what we can do, should we, leave everything behind? He says, no, if you're a gardener, continue to be gardener, but transform your job. Like instead of produce the plants to get rich or become the best gardener in the world, do it to become a shareholder of the praises that these plants make, or become a shareholder of the benefits that others gain through the plants that you grow, rather than trying to be a leader of the field, trying to be a best student, best doctor, best lawyer. This is usually what they suggest, right, all the time for us. We are Muslim, we should be the best doctors in the world. We should be the best engineers, best artists in the world. He says, try to be best worshipper who happens to be a gardener. So yeah, this is what I understand. Please go ahead with your comments. Feria, please go ahead.
So I have a question about the first mind. I'm just wondering. So what does it actually mean? Can we expound a little more on what it means? You will receive a share of the praises and glorifications offered by all the plants and trees that you grow in the garden. What does it mean to receive a share of the praises and glorifications? So that was my first question. The second question is about in the second mind, when it says, oh, yeah, do whatever you're doing, right? Cultivate whatever you're doing. But on condition you work in the name of the true provider. Okay, yeah. Realizing that it's not from me, I'm just utilizing it. and within the bounds of what he permits. So I was just wondering, what does that mean? Within the bounds of what he permits, like, I don't know what that is. So that I was just curious to know about that. So yeah. So first thing is, if someone can elaborate further on receiving a share of the praises and glorification. What do you understand from that?
Well, thanks a lot. These are very valid questions, which occupies my mind as well. So I was expecting, to be honest, like our beloved brother Yusuf would give us some nice examples so that we can understand first mine.
So now we are having this discussion. I was thinking about how am I benefiting from somebody else's praises and glorifications. So I guess more or less everybody's trying to put something into this discussion. Let's say Abdurrahman read it, you asked a question, but then Feriha makes a comment which is Feriha's praise and glorification of her maker, which we can benefit from. I mean, if I am open to and listening to what's happening in here and look at it from that perspective, because he was saying that with a sound intention, I am trying to understand, or I'm preparing myself to hear something from Feriha. I mean, I might be prejudiced saying that Feriha, maybe she's not good, whatever. I must condition myself and close that door to myself even from the very beginning, and not listen to what she's saying even. But if I say that, no, this is like a table that we sit together, everybody's like a potluck dinner, everybody's bringing something to the table. So in this case, I guess if the example would be having a discussion, I can definitely benefit from what Feriha is bringing as Feriha's glorification of her Lord, and listening to it, I can get a share of it. And I guess likewise in the example that he was giving for an orchard, in there, if I prepare myself, if I, as much as I'm conscious, let's put it this way, not if or none, because it sounds like as if it is binary, yes or no. As much as I am consciously worshiping my Creator, meaning that glorifying my Creator in my prayer, I can then realize that the apricot tree that I am producing is also glorifying its maker, because it is producing things beyond its capacity. Likewise, I am producing apparently apple or apricot, but I know that I'm not. And I observe the same behavior over the tree as well. So say that, oh, actually this tree is glorifying its maker by saying that you are the one that put those jewel-like fruits to my branches. And I don't know how Awesome would be, for example, glorifying, or Awesome's code glorifies their maker, so that Awesome is taking a share from his code if he wants to share.
Yeah, that would be great. Like, Awesome, that would be great if you can, tell us like, what kind of praises you hear from the work you do, or maybe I'm just, picking random people. Suhail, if you can share like how medicine you use praise the Lord, or Hatice, how the animations you make praises the Lord, and so on. That would be very beneficial indeed. But no pressure. Suhail, please go ahead.
It's what Nursi's saying is, right in theory, but it's difficult in practice because you get you become drowned in worldly affairs. So, for example, like in medicine, if somebody is sick, it's very easy to think about the sick person with respect to his or her illness, and then how to treat that person's illness. And the reason, and forget about, as I mentioned, that vertical relationship, or seeing how through you, like the name of, Ash-Shafi is being manifest, or the healer, or Ar-Rahman, or merciful. It's difficult because you're sort of like inundated with the complete opposite of that worldview in daily life. Is it possible? Yes. But does it happen? Maybe, I experienced that maybe one moment in the day, brief moment, because to make the vertical relationship requires a conscious choice to make. And in that sense, just, whether you, like, for example, I'm in medicine, then it becomes a worldly duty. You don't see yourself working in the name of the true provider, as he said, within the bounds of what he permits, and see yourself as a distribution official, giving his property to his creatures. But you can do it in any line of work, because any sort of work profession sort of manifests particular names more pronounced than others. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but let's say you're an engineer, you could say there's the manifestation of the name, let's say, all knowledgeable, or a fashioner. Those things. But the thing is, I don't want to blame society or the pervading culture, but it does make it more difficult to do so. So in that sense, to tie it back to prayer, not only like does prayer do it, but man needs it. It's necessary. Like that's the conclusion I've come to, and as Nurshi says, there's no other way around it. You can say that, oh, I don't like doing it, or it's too much. But, even in that sort of response it's like a kind of a reflection of a lazy response. Like even I have that feeling. It's almost being self-contradictory, because on one hand, I know that, my not doing it is a sort of, it lets me sort of drown into that abyss of ignorance or heedlessness, of forgetting what is really taking place in the world. Whereas prayer, as Norsi says, it brings you back to your senses, in a sense, your human senses. Treating somebody who's ill, yes, it's human, but it's not true to the human faculties for what their purpose is. So that means you're operating really outside of what he permits. It's operating outside of those bounds that he permits. Really, the parameters are connecting those qualities to him.
Jazakallah khair. So other day, I was walking with a friend. Since I guess you all realize that since it's springtime now, at least let's say spring is approaching, all these tiny flowers blooming. And she was showing me some details on the flowers, and she was so surprised, like how can he with a capital H, how can he draw with such details? Like it's so hard. She herself is an artist. Like all these tiny details, all these colors, the transitions of the colors, and how these colors, come together, and none of them are, let's say, the absolute awkward, like out of place. they all well designed, well studied, well drawn. So with these tiny flowers that you see, when you look closely, when you look close, I guess you see all these praises there. They say our makers is such and such. Our artist is such and such. So imagine yourself, growing all these plants in your garden. Then you will sell them. They are nothing but praises, or the praises of the Creator, with every detail they have. And I guess this would be the same with every occupation. That assume you're teaching to kids, and all the sentences that you articulate that they can understand. Isn't that like something wonderful that your mind, as if getting contact with their minds and know what they would understand and then articulating them. Such a praisal of the one who talks, the one who knows, the one who wise, and the one who talks. I guess with every product that we produce, with every outcome of our efforts, we can see the praises there. And with the second mind, again, I'm turning back to Brother Yusuf. So she was asking about the parts within the bounds of what he permits. So what should we understand from here?
Before there, it will become like almsgiving from you. Again, it was in the Saturday discussion of Dr. Ali, he was talking about, if I don't remember wrong, this word almsgiving, it is sadaqah. And in there he was mentioning sadaqah is coming from confirming something, confirmation. So let's say in this example, you produced something and your gardens produce, whether by animals or man, cattle or flies, buyers or thieves, it will become like a confirmation from you. So what am I confirming if those creatures benefit from produce of my effort? So can it be like, since I know that I'm not the producer, yet as if I am being a close observer of this interaction now. They are being provided, and apparently I gave it to them, and I know that it's not mine. So I am as if being the first observer and the witness of the provider now. So I am saying that there is a provider which is hiring me as if, or using me as a means or an observer. And now I bear witness really that such a provider, a merciful provider exists. And I have a first-hand experience because I worked for that provider. It is as if, let's say there's this king, and the king is giving, let's say, helping all the poor. And you are occupied by this king as the distributor of this money for the poor. So now you have a first-hand experience from very close. You know that the king is so merciful and he is a provider, because you have worked in the job of this distribution. This is why it becomes an almsgiving for me, if I am aware of it. Maybe on top of that, we can go with, but on condition you work in the name of the true provider. Because if I'm distributing on my own name, not on the name of the true provider, then as if I am feeling like I am giving it to people. But if I am working in the name of the true provider, then this would be more conscious. Since I speak a lot now, you need to answer Feriha's question.
So what comes to my mind, unless someone else, our artists friends, wants to add something here. Abdurrahman, would you like to give a shot? So, like what I was thinking is, for instance, if I say that Yusuf, you should work with within some ethical standards, or you should do whatever you do with moral standards, let's say, within the moral standards. When you work with your colleagues, you should follow such and such protocols, rules. Otherwise, it's not, let's say, politically correct to act such a way. Or, like, there's always an ethics of whatever you do. There's an ethics of medicine, there's an ethics of teaching, there's an ethics of being a scientist, and so on. And for a strange reason, we don't find them surprising. We do not find them, let's say, restricting, or we do not find them like questionable. It's normal, like, yeah, yes, you should be ethical, you should be moral, you should be whatever. You should follow scientific standards when you do your scientific job. Nobody would complain. But when it comes to, when we say, okay, you should do whatever you do in the limits that is driven by the Creator, then it becomes somehow disturbing. Like, I'm not saying this because that the question was raised. Like, I guess I also have the same question. So I'm just, making an introspection to see why I don't understand this part clearly. So it's obvious that we don't have problems with following rules. Like, this is how we live our lives. And most of the times we even impose some rules, for instance, when we have children. So we don't find it any inhuman. Like, the rules are for humans. And we like them, we follow them. But when it comes to, again, the Creator and His rules, we always, at least most of the time, find it disturbing. Like, oh yeah, but the religion shouldn't be that way, or belief shouldn't be this way. And to me, it reminds me, or it tells me that maybe I'm not convinced that He's the true opener. He's the one tells me what is right and what is wrong. And I am in need to learn this. I am in need to learn what is right and what is wrong. I cannot tell what is wrong and what is right. I cannot tell right from the wrong myself. And if I'm not convinced that He is the one, then I start questioning all these rules and so on, I guess. And so this is one aspect. But in this context, in this specific context, when he says within the bounds of what He permits, I guess one obvious meaning would be what Yusuf said, that it becomes a sadaqah, it becomes an alms-giving, only if you realize that it's from Him. So this is a bound, for instance, He drives, that you need to recognize that it's from Him. And the way I'm using He drives, drove, right? He drove Him. Yeah. He draws this line, like I simply mean that this is your conclusion, that it comes from him. So he has to be in the equation, and so on. I guess this is the one meaning of it. Unless you realize that it's from him, you wouldn't benefit from it. But anyway, I wanted to highlight maybe another point, which is kind of implicit here, is that unfortunately, whenever it comes to boundaries drawn by my creator, I have a reaction, like as if as a human being bounded and so on is not something I like, as if. But it's not true. It's not true at all. I need them. I need to follow them. I need to know what is right, what is wrong. This is my need. And I'm okay when it comes from society. I'm okay when it comes from the group of people who defines the norms of my profession. But I'm not okay when it comes to from the owner of the universe. Suhail says something, let me read. Oh, okay. He says, what is the question again? So question was, what do you understand from the part, he says, within the bounds of what he permits? So what we should understand from within the bounds of what he permits. And again, like my answer to this question would be, I guess he means as long as you put the creator into the center of the equation. This is the way to get the benefit. Otherwise, if you just cut the relationship with him and attribute the things to yourselves or other sources, then you wouldn't benefit from that. This is what, like, at least in a nutshell, what I understand. Feria, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, that helped out. So now I'm thinking of it again in terms of what you shared. Yeah, like everything we're doing, we have to recognize the real owner, the real provider. Now, I know you did mention a little bit about moral values, ethical values. So I'm even thinking, I'm just going to give an analogy. Like, let's say I'm taking an exam and, oh man, this formula just slipped through my mind. And, you know, then I don't know, somebody's like showing me the formula, and then I say, hey, guess what? Let me see it in the name of the, you know, the provider. But then I'm cheating, basically, right? Cheating myself. So morally, that's wrong. So that would be, again, like within the worldly affairs of things. But I'm thinking of another analogy now, copyrighted things, right? If I start distributing text or something without proper citation, then that's not allowed, right? So that's not allowed doing anything without acknowledging the real owner of things. Thank you.
And he says at the beginning of the first mind, like a sound intention. I guess this is also very important. Like whatever we do, I think we should have the intention of asking, like, should I do it this way or that way? Which one would please my creator? When I give something to someone, like I have the intention of knowing what is my limits in doing so. Because it obviously doesn't belong to me. Like, just because I grow plants, can I simply throw them to the garbage? It's mine, right? Nobody can say anything, seemingly. But I guess I should have the intention of asking to him what I can do, what I cannot do.
So I guess this sound intention part is, to me, it sounds like, what is my motivation? What is my orientation when I start doing this action? And a sound intention, a sound orientation would be, is it a substantial thing that motivates me? Or is it a temporary thing that makes me run after that? So for example, I would like to do that because I want to be famous. You become famous, so what? I mean, I'm going to die. And in today's age, I mean, today I am famous, tomorrow somebody else is going to become famous and I'm going to be forgotten immediately. So is this a sound intention, a thing that should really motivate me? So I guess I should be questioning, is this a substantial thing? This is why a sound intention to me sounds like, is it connecting me with eternity? Is it connecting with me with, or is it just like a momentary thing or a relatively short thing that's not really going to give me any satisfaction, just something that passes by? So for example, writing code, so I would like to do it in a way that it's going to be the most optimal. Okay, good, but why am I trying to write the most optimal code? To me, it's being like, because of my obsession. I want to make it perfect. So, because I'm putting a lot of effort to make it as optimal as possible, but if I don't pay extra attention into here, okay, but what do I gain out of this obsession? Is it just for obsession's sake of obsession? Or is it, because otherwise, I mean, I don't know how many times I have written relatively optimal code and I forgot about them. So they're all gone. I mean, they're staying somewhere, forgotten, maybe already deleted. But I didn't get anything out of this deal. So a good intention would be to tie it with make such an orientation so that it's going to stay with you. And I guess it requires, of course, an extra job of putting some sort of consciousness in there. There's this obsession, for example, comes to me uninvited. I find myself in obsession. Somebody might find themselves, again me, trying to become famous with it. It comes uninvited, but I need to ask the question, is this what it is? Is this what it is supposed to be, or can I turn it to a meaningful way? Because those feelings are coming, if you like, from up or by default uninvited, but with my free will, I can change their direction. I cannot give them existence. I do not create those feelings in the first place.
Or send them non-existence.
Yeah, but I am given choice to reevaluate them, change their direction to a fruitful way. They don't have to go into waste. But if they go untreated, they go into waste.
Roman, you seems like having some questions. Would you like to share with us?
No, I enjoyed the example.
Okay. So alhamdulillah, it was a good example, isn't it?
Our obsessions, yes.
Let's continue, inshallah, the last paragraph. So see what a great loss is made by one who abandons the prescribed prayers. Just like Freya was saying, like a prescribed prayers, like you have a
prescription.
Yes, a health issue, and this is your prescription. Who abandons the prayers? What a big loss. What significant wealth he loses, and he is deprived of those two results and minds which would otherwise cause him to work eagerly and ensure his morale is strong. He becomes bankrupt. Even as he grows old, he will grow weary of gardening and lose interest in it, saying, "What is it to me? I'm anyway leaving this world. Why should I put up with this much difficulty?" He will sink into idleness. But the first man says, the first man here, I guess he's the one who performs his prayers and act in the name of the Creator, not himself. He would say, "I shall work harder at both worship and licit activities in order to send even more abundant light to my grave and produce more provisions for my life in the hereafter. I shall work harder at both worship and licit activities so that I will send even more abundant light to my grave." So we started with intentions, and now it says that when you follow the right path, your motivation will also be better. Even when you reach the end, you will not take it as loss. You will not take it as waste of time. You wouldn't say, "Oh, I wasted my entire life doing this and that." Instead, you will even want to continue doing it until you die, your last moment. But on the other hand, if you do things in the name of yourself or your society or whatever, other than your Creator, true other, and you do not perform your prayers, which are prescribed, then you will see your entire life as a waste. I guess we don't have to search for examples for that. We have all these famous examples, including our lives. We are famous as well. And whenever a famous people die, especially when they are billionaires or whatever, we hear all these stories about their, the last words in deathbed. They say, "Oh, if I was, given another chance, I would do this instead." Or they give advice about how love is important. Like probably they spend all their lives with working, earning money, sleeping in the workplace, waking up in the workplace. And then in the last moment, they give advices about love, family. And when I look at myself, I see myself in the same path. Like most of the things I do, I'm afraid that the next year I will see them as waste. So worthless. It seems that everything's so obvious. Maybe we can continue it in short. Still waiting for a few seconds. Okay, let's continue with it in short, inshallah. Abdurrahman, would you like to, please?
Of course. In short, O my soul, know that yesterday has left you, and as for tomorrow, you have nothing to prove that it will be yours. In which case, know that your true life is the present day. So throw at least one of its hours into a mosque or prayer mat, a coffer for the hereafter like a reserve fund, set up for the true future. Know too that for you and for everyone, each new day is the door to a new world. If you do not perform the prayers, your world that day will depart dark and wretched and will testify against you in the world of similitudes. For everyone, every day, has a private world out of this world, and its nature is dependent on the person's heart and actions. Like a splendid palace reflected in a mirror takes on the color of the mirror. If it is black, it appears black. If it is red, it appears red. Also, it takes on the qualities of the mirror. If the mirror is smooth, it shows the palace to be beautiful, and if it is not, it shows it to be ugly. As it shows the most delicate things to be coarse, so you alter the shape of your own world with your heart, mind, actions, and wishes. You may make it testify either for you or against you. If you perform the 5 daily prayers, and through them you are turned towards that world's glorious maker, all of a sudden your world, which looks up to you, is lit up. Quite simply, as though the prayers are an electric lamp and your intention to perform them touches the switch. They disperse the world's darkness and show the changes and movements within the confused wretchedness of worldly chaos to be a wise and purposeful order and a meaningful writing of divine power. They scatter one light of the light-filled verse. God is the light of the heavens and the earth over your heart, and your world on that day is illuminated through the light's reflection. It will cause it to testify in your favor through its luminosity. Beware, do not say, "What are my prayers in comparison with the reality of the prayers?" What are my prayers in comparison with the reality of the prayers? Because like the seed of a date palm describes the full-grown tree, your prayers describe your tree. The difference is only in the summary and details. Like the prayers of a great saint, the prayers of ordinary people like you or me, even if they are not aware of it, have a share of that light. There is a mystery in this truth, even if the conscious mind does not perceive it, but the unfolding and illumination differs according to the degrees of those performing them. However many stages and degrees there are from the seed of a date palm to the mature tree, the degrees of the prayers and their stages are even more numerous. But the essence of that luminous truth is present in all the degrees. O God, grant blessings and peace to the one who said, "The 5 daily prayers are the pillar of religion," and to all his family and companions.
Jazakallah khair, very concise but clear summaries. There are many places that needs to be discussed, of course, but alhamdulillah, I benefited a lot from these 3 paragraphs or sections. And especially the last part, like when he says, "Beware, do not say what are my prayers in comparison with the reality of the prayers." Like this is, we feel or we say or we hear a lot that, but the prayer is not that, it's not only physical actions. There's much more behind that. Without reaching this true essence of the prayer, why should I pray? My prayers is just nothing compared to a true prayer. He says, just like from seed to tree, there's all these different levels, and you will be at one stage, one level, but it will never be wasted. As Brother Ali was also saying that, it's like without going to class, there's no way of learning what is being taught there. So yes, when you go to class, you should listen, you should be conscious about what professor says and so on. Otherwise, going to class would be meaningless activity. But you should still go to the class, even if you're not that much clever for listening to your professor and so on, because it's like a precursor, prerequisite.
So attending a class consists of several things. One of them is physically being present in the classroom, but also, let's say, opening up your notebook is part of attending class. Taking notes is part of attending class. Listening to the professor carefully is part of attending class. Asking questions to the professor is part of attending the class. So this is what, exemplary student attending a classroom is going to be all inclusive of this. But if I am a mediocre student, and if I say that I cannot attend a class like this. So shall I not go to class at all? I mean, physically being present at class. Maybe I am okay with partially listening, so I'm going to take something out of it. Or maybe I will take some notes, and after the class, I will need to revisit the ideas, whatever. So if I cannot be the ideal student in the classroom, shall I not attend class at all? I guess this is what the last paragraph is saying.
And I guess there's also another part that we sometimes miss is a big lesson that you learn from attending the class is the fact that you are a student who needs to be taught. You learn that, like you accept that you are a student and you accept that there is a professor. So you realize the relationship between student and the professor. This is something you learn if you don't learn anything else, which is by itself is a huge gain. Same way, like when you pray, when you perform these 5 daily prayers, maybe one big thing that you learn, is that you are a worshiper and He's your Lord. Otherwise, saying that, if you cannot, get the essence of the prayer, reach the true reality of the prayer, I will not pray, you already declining, like rejecting the idea that you cannot make such decisions.
And it's also denying my reality as a human, as if I achieve something at the best in my first try. It never happens anyways.
Yes, never. There are some comments from Fariha. She says, it's funny, but students know that they get points for attendance, even if they are distracted with other things. She smiles. And then continues, attendance is 10% of your grade, for example. Which is a good example, because, I guess this is the same with our prayers as well. Just attendance is a big part of our grade.
So meaning physically being in the classroom.
Yes. And in the short part, he says all this, the fully loaded ideas that he shares about every day being a new day. Your present day leaving you into darkness if you do not pray, and so on. So we have very limited time. Since we started late, we have around 5 maybe minutes. So if anyone wants to take a shot or dive into this in short part, Mohammed Said says another thing, let me read. He says, and it is always possible only if I consistently attend the class. But I don't, my knowledge will not stay as it is, it will shrink. That's a great point. So he says it's always possible to improve if only if I consistently attend the class. So yeah. Any comments about the in short part?
So there are a lot of things to discuss in there, but since we have a limited time, a few things that attracts my attention is he's talking about this know too that for you and for everyone, each new day is the door to a new world. And this world is being as if painted with my perception. So we might be sharing the same physical work environment or living in the same house, but you have a mood, I have a mood. So I am painting every day the same sun is rising to Philadelphia, but some people are being happy, some people are being sad in that day. So my world is being painted. I observe the world the way that my mood is. So in here, he is as if saying that these prayers are your opportunities to condition yourself or orient yourself. I guess orient is a better word. Orient yourself, that you remember, as we have been discussing so far, your glorification. You glorify your Creator. You remember your neediness. And as such, then I can extrapolate and apply the same pattern to the existence, their neediness, and on top of their neediness, they are being provided. So the whole life itself now can become more meaningful, more pleasant, more welcoming. So this would be the ultimate outcome, or the, not ultimate, but the very rapid, quick payback that I will receive from performing prescribed prayers. And this is also at the same time giving us a hint why they are spread over the day. And they are not at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day, but scattered over the day, because I am in need of being reminded for sure. And I am orienting myself, otherwise I get lost in my work, let's say. Then take a breath, reorient yourself, refocus, and then this is going to help you. And as he was saying, testify. Otherwise, it will testify you in the world of similitudes. So then, the world of similitudes, again, we talked about this before, but I look at then, let's say, if I am very sad, I look at clouds, but the clouds might appear to me as, oh, the world is also in a upset mood. Now, it's a physical entity, but in my perception, in the, how do they say, let's come up with a metaphor, we say, the world of similitudes, the way I understand what world of similitudes is, in my perception, now the clouds are as if the universe is crying, the universe is also as sad as I am. So this is how it sounds to me, but it's actually, it's not sad, but my perception makes it sad for me. So in my understanding or interpretation of existence, things are coming upside down. And this author in here is tying it back to the prayer.
The point you made about the prayers being distributed at different time points in the day, throughout the day, together with painting the world with your perceptions, making a great sense to me now. Like it's as if it's like painting, right? You start with the background first. You put a background color on the canvas with your morning prayer. You put a background to your day. You start the perception, like perceiving the reality through your prayer. Now you have the background, and then you put another layer. And then you put another layer, and then you put another layer, and you have the final painting there. And all these layers contributes to the final product. You cannot just, paint at once. So, yeah, alhamdulillah.
And the way he finally ties up this verse, Allahu nuru samawati wal ard, as he interprets this as my daily prayers are going to be the switch, turning on the switch that's going to enlighten everything. So with me worshiping my maker, the darkness of existence disappears and everything becomes lit up, because then I can realize that everything is worshiping. Because worshiping also means, the flip side of worshiping is everything is being provided. Because if everything is a worshiper, then that means they don't have anything in and of themselves, and they are being provided. Therefore, there must be a provider, because they are being provided. As much as I am being provided, everything is being provided. Because if I don't look at it like this, I realize my neediness, but there's no provider, then everything becomes like orphans. Everybody is needy, everything is crying, there is nobody that watches over us. So much of a chaotic existence. But once I solve the riddle for myself, which is through the prayer, as much as I'm aware of it, as in the last paragraph you said, as you were saying, there's this from seed to the tree, there are stages. But he doesn't say it is null, it's zero. He says that it has stages. So to the extent that I'm aware of my worshiping, my abdness, I will be my world will become enlightened accordingly. So this sometimes in our discussions, maybe to increase the contrast, we speak black and white terms. But author in here, for example, is saying that it's a seed. At least it's a seed. So he's not saying that there's nothing. He's not saying that going to the class and not listening to the professor has nothing. It's not this sort of a language. But he's saying that still there is something in there to you. And to the extent that he was saying, even if you do not recognize it, at the last paragraph, as if he is also staying on the side of encouraging. He is not putting the words in a way to discourage me. He's saying that the difference is only in the summary and details, like the prayers of the great saint, the prayers of ordinary people like you or me, even if they are not aware of it, have a share of that light. There is a mystery in this truth, even if the conscious mind does not perceive it. But the unfolding and illumination differs according to the degrees of those performing them. So I guess he is still staying in the encouraging part of it, and he has a truth in there. Because maybe due to our education, I might be thinking that my consciousness is limited with my mind, but artists are, for example, having a different type of consciousness, which, since I'm not trained about it, I do not sense it. But as I start hearing about, let's say, an artist's perspective, then I realize that, yeah, I can also make sense of this stuff.
This is really important. Like, we are out of time, but I guess this requires, deserves some highlight and emphasis. That there are all these stages. Nothing is black and white, as you said. I guess there is no such thing as saying that either you have to do it that way or it would be meaningless. There's no such thing in reality. Like, everything has a share. Small or big, everything has a share. And we should be really careful with respecting this share. Not for the sake of being politically correct, but not to lose this benefit ourselves as well. I don't think author he's trying to be politically correct here, or just encouraging people for the sake of encouragement. But he's trying to provide himself, because he's aware that sometimes he himself also not aware of all the details of what he does. But he wants to secure himself, like teach himself that just because you don't see it, or just because they don't see it, do not deprive them or yourself from its benefits. We all like always do that, like say that, oh, look at these people, how they dress, dress like the 1,000 years ago, like the Arabians who lived 1,000 years ago. They think they follow this religion. They don't even know anything about the religion. They cannot, answer this. They cannot answer that. I'm depriving myself, like, yes, maybe I don't have to dress like them, but I'm depriving myself from a source which is following the Prophet. Just because I find them irritating, I would stop following the Prophet in other means as well. So anyway, this stages part, I guess, is really important. Like, leave yourself alone. Like, don't fight with yourself, or don't fight with others just because you don't reach a certain level.
I guess I'm taking it a bit longer, sorry, but as if it happens, in order to encourage people, let's say if we go with the class example, let's say the student shows the teacher shows the most successful student as an example to the rest of the class, and in order to encourage the rest of the class, if the teacher also picks up the laziest student and comparing it to the most successful student and say that, look to this miserable student, right? Would you like to be like this? Him being in the classroom has no use. Be like this guy. I mean, this sort of an attitude, we do that to, let's say, emphasize the importance of ideal student and encouraging people to there. But there's also, I guess, a human psychology aspect of it. Because when you're talking about, let's say, belief versus unbelief, you speak in terms of, you speak black and white terms. But when it comes to, as you were saying, is coming to the classroom totally black? Or in that domain, this was the most black you get. This is why you were contrasting the two. But in reality, as Nursi is in here saying, of course, if you contrast a tree, a full-blown tree with respect to a seed, tree is giving fruit. Seed doesn't give anything. It's just a dry, small piece of wood over there. But he says, in it, it has the truth of a tree. It didn't expand yet, and it can expand. So try to expand it. Instead of saying that, oh, I am not a tree, therefore I am useless. So this is not what the state that you should be in. So this sort of a contrast that we do, I mean, in the discussion environment or in our day-to-day experience,
in ourselves,
might be discouraging myself to benefit from truth. So am I making service or disservice to myself with that?
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين